Hey guys, it's Xander. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about Khamzat Chimaev because he's going to be fighting in a few weeks against Paulo Costa. Recently, Paulo Costa came out and said that he had surgery 3 weeks ago. And obviously that sucks. It looks like he's still going to possibly fight Khamzat. But man, this is terrible, not just for Paulo Costa, but for Khamzat Chimaev. Because I feel like nowadays, Khamzat Chimaev's been getting a lot of love. People are saying that he's going to be the next middleweight champion, that he is going to be dominant pretty much for years to come. And I kind of want to, have some arguments against that. And this is not saying for all the Khamzat fans, I'm not saying that Khamzat Chimaev is a bad fighter. He is a fantastic fighter, and I do believe that he has potential to be an all-time great. He has that kind of potential. But we have to look at the track record for Khamzat Chimaev. Now let's go ahead and get into it. Obviously, back in 2020, he made his UFC debut, and he was able to pick up some wins. And he did it in quick fashion. I believe on July 15th, he fought and got a very dominant victory over John Phillips. Then, I believe a week or two later, he fights Rhys McKee and gets a victory very quickly as well. And, I mean, this is like, we didn't really know too much about Khamzat, but then that kind of put him on the map. Then he fights Gerald Meerschaert and gets a one-punch knockout victory against him. And that was like, okay, yeah, this dude is a star. This dude is going to be an upcoming UFC star, right? A star in the making. Then it takes a little while for him to fight again. Then he fights Leach and gets a completely dominant victory. And it's like, okay, bro, like we are all on board. He did this on the grandest stage, on a big-time pay-per-view. I'm like, yup, this is the guy. This is the man to possibly be dominant in the welterweight division. But then, he was supposed to fight Nate Diaz. I believe that he was supposed to fight Nate Diaz next. Nope, I'm not correct on that one. He fought Gilbert Burns. My apologies. And has a completely, very competitive fight against Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns put it on Khamzat Chimaev, pause if needed, right? And you could have said that Gilbert Burns got robbed that night. Not saying that I do believe that Khamzat got the victory, but a lot of people thought that, in their opinion, that Gilbert Burns won that fight. And this is a guy who was a former lightweight. Think about it for a second. He was fighting at 155 pounds, Gilbert Burns was. And Khamzat Chimaev got knocked down by Gilbert Burns. And he was, I mean, if you saw his face after that fight, got completely fucked up by Gilbert Burns big time. I mean, this was a war. When his last few fights, I mean, nothing really happened to him whatsoever. He was taking no damage. He was barely getting, punched. He was, he could have pretty much kept fighting week after week after week. That's how dominant his finishes was and how dominant he was in the cage. But then he has a Gilbert Burns fight, that fight with Gilbert Burns, and everything changed about Khamzat. We're like, damn, Khamzat Chimaev, he's kind of overrated. He would have lost against Leon Edwards if Leon Edwards fought him. You know what I mean? A lot of people changed the narrative against him. And then he fights Nate Diaz. Well, he was supposed to fight Nate Diaz. And then we know what happened. He missed weight by pretty much 8 pounds, right? And we're like, damn, is this dude a weight bully? This dude couldn't make weight at 170 pounds. I mean, this was terrible. Then he obviously ends up fighting. It just somehow works out that he ends up fighting Kevin Holland, where Kevin Holland was pretty much supposed to be fighting a striker in Daniel Rodriguez, and then he ends up fighting, has no preparation whatsoever for a fight against Khamzat Chimaev, and gets completely ragdolled. And I understand a lot of people's like, oh yeah, that was supposed to happen. But Kevin Holland was not preparing for a wrestling war against Khamzat Chimaev. He was going to have a stand-up war against Daniel Rodriguez. That was the fight that he was supposed to fight. But with Kevin Holland being Kevin Holland, he went and took the fight against Khamzat Chimaev in the co-main event and gets completely ragdolled. And the way he got that takedown too, it looked like Kevin Holland wanted to tap gloves, but then Khamzat shoots for the takedown immediately. I mean, that to me was a pretty iffy move, in my honest opinion, from Khamzat. You know what I mean? Obviously, I do believe that Khamzat was going to win that fight anyway, regardless, even with preparation from Kevin Holland, with a full training camp of just wrestling and grappling. I do believe that he was going to beat Kevin Holland. Let's just be honest here. He was going to dominate him. But I'm just saying, that's a little iffy. And now we look at him now going up against Paulo Costa, who, before we knew about the whole situation with, the surgery, on his, I believe it was on his elbow if I'm not mistaken. You know, we're like, damn, this is actually big time competition. This is a huge step up in competition compared to his last fight. But now we have this guy who's coming off an injury, going to possibly be fighting Khamzat Chimaev, and like, damn, like, realistically, what was the most impressive victory for Khamzat Chimaev? I would say probably the Gilbert Burns victory to me was the most impressive victory, because we're looking at a Gilbert Burns who was top 5 in the division, and he wins, but it wasn't in dominant fashion. And we look at Gilbert Burns, I mean, listen, Gilbert Burns was a lightweight at one point, and we have this guy in Khamzat Chimaev that's fighting at 185 versus 155 that Gilbert Burns was. And he had a completely dominant fight. I mean, he was getting, I mean, I remember that Khamzat Chimaev was on top of him, and then he, like, pushed him. Gilbert Burns pushed him with his legs easily. I mean, this was a completely dominant, like, not dominant, but a back and forth fight between them. And we thought that Gilbert Burns was going to get smoked by Khamzat. I remember the hype for Khamzat Chimaev going into this fight. It's like, yo, Gilbert Burns has no chance. And Gilbert Burns goes in there and has a competitive fight and damn near won the damn thing. Completely great performance from Gilbert Burns. Obviously a great performance from Khamzat Chimaev, but I mean, man, this was definitely very concerning. A lot of people were kind of, you know, turning their backs on Khamzat. I mean, I was like, oh, okay, I mean, he's still great, but I don't think he's going to be able to fare well as we thought he would against a guy like a Leon or a Kamaru Usman. But now the tides have turned, and now everybody's on the train. And I want to ask you guys the question, are we overrating him a little bit? I feel like we kind of are. Like, let's have these expectations at a lower level for Khamzat, because then we're going to end up being disappointed when he fights a guy like, let's say, for example, a Robert Whittaker. You know what I mean? I feel like that fight is a lot closer than what people think. A lot of people think nowadays, like, oh, Robert Whittaker just got finished by Driscus. You know, how you know, Khamzat's just going to destroy him. When that's probably not the case. I can definitely see Robert Whittaker, who to me I believe is a better striker than Khamzat Chimaev, be able to keep this on the feet, you know what I mean, and beat Khamzat. I can definitely see that happen. I'm not saying that, listen, Khamzat to me could definitely be the champion. I think he could beat Sean Strickland. But let's not get ahead of ourselves and be like, oh yeah, this guy's going to be the next GOAT. We have to see with evidence, you know, in this next fight, obviously, we can't really give him a whole lot of credit. I mean, okay, don't get me wrong. We can give him some credit. I want to preface by saying this. We can definitely give him some credit because Paulo Costa, he's a big-time name, a very solid fighter, but Paulo Costa had surgery 3 weeks ago, and we don't know how much that's going to affect his, you know, him fighting. And let's say, for example, it is a competitive fight between Khamzat and Paulo Costa. What are we saying then? Oh, he had a competitive fight against somebody who just had surgery on his elbow. You know what I mean? We're going to start taking things away from him. Like, Khamzat has to, like, I think there's so much pressure on Khamzat now to the point where he has to finish Paulo Costa in, like, the first round or the first 2 rounds of the fight. Like, and he has to, like, completely dominate him. Like, there can be no instances whatsoever where Khamzat Chimaev is in any types of danger against Paulo Costa right now, I feel like. Because the amount of hype that this man has is absolutely astounding. Where this next fight, with the information that we know about Paulo Costa, he has to dominate Paulo Costa now. I really do believe so. Because if he doesn't, then people are going to be disappointed. That's how UFC fans are. And I'm not saying I'm going to be disappointed. If he wins, I feel like that is still very impressive. But still, man, I do believe that in some sort of way, he does have to kind of get a pretty solid, dominant victory against Paulo Costa. Because if he goes and has a 3-round war against Paulo Costa, who just came off surgery, I don't know. I mean, that's not really a great look necessarily for Khamzat Chimaev. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, the fight happens, and I do believe, I'm going to give you guys my prediction now. I think Khamzat Chimaev is going to win, and I think he's going to get a submission victory in the second round early on. I think he's going to get it probably within the first 2 minutes of the second round. And I think, actually, I can see him get it. Actually, you know what? I'll change that. He's going to get a first round submission about 4 minutes in, and I think he's going to get the victory against Paulo Costa, probably by rear naked choke or something like that. And that is going to be it for me, this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys soon with another video. Peace out. God bless y'all. Peace.